Welcome, I'm Gregory, and this is Sony Simplified. And today, we're gonna be discussing silent shooting with your Sony Alpha camera. But before we can get to that, please remember to like, subscribe, and smash that bell so you get notifications for any time that we will go live in the future. So with that done, let's talk about the topics for today. We're gonna talk about what is silent shooting, the pros, the cons, how to enable it, when and when not to use it. So that way you get the best experience with your Sony Alpha camera. All right, now that we got that out of the way, let's discuss what is silent shooting. Silent shooting or silent shutter on a Sony Alpha camera means that we eliminate the mechanical shutter part. So that is the actual moving piece in the camera that lets the light hit the sensor. And it's the clack or the noise that you hear when you push the button. So by locking that up and just doing it electronically by using the actual imager, it keeps the camera silent. And that is what we refer to as silent shutter or silent shooting with our cameras. So that is silent shooting. And remember, this is a live video, so please put your chat in there. And I'd love to answer some questions if you have them out there for the community. So put them in the chat and let me know how everybody's doing today. All right, so that is what silent shooting is. So it is actually shooting in total silence. Now, I don't see any questions in the chat so far, so let's go on to its pros. Why is that a good thing for your camera? Why is that a positive? Well, the ability to shoot in silence is very important when you need to not be distracted from what your subject is. Say you're at a wedding, okay? So you're sitting there taking pictures at a wedding. You don't want to interrupt the vows or anything like that with the clack, clack, clack of the shutter. So that allows you to have that silent shooting. So that's one place. So what if you have a newborn and that baby is sleeping, which, hey, if you just had a newborn, I guarantee you want the baby sleeping so you can catch up on your rest as well. So the ability for your camera not to wake the baby and still get great photos of your newborn and be able to share them with family and friends, it's an amazing feature. So that's definitely a pro. So that's silent there. And let's just say you're out in the wilderness, you're on safari, or you're taking pictures of animals, and you don't want to spook your subject, right? You want to make sure that bird doesn't fly away, or you're in the woods and you don't want that cheetah or that animal to know exactly where you're at because you don't want to get chased by that animal. So silent shooting is a really nice feature to have on your camera when you don't want to bring attention to yourself. So that is the first pro of silent shooting there. All right, let me check my chat here real quick. All right, I don't see anything Costa in there. Yeah, Sony Bravia, something like that. So I'll keep checking chat throughout the thing, but let's move on to our second pro. Our second pro is nowhere on your camera. That shutter is a moving part. So by the ability to start this electronically and we keep that shutter raised, we don't have moving parts in the camera. So that can make your camera last a little bit longer. So that is a definite pro to keeping your camera longer. The other benefit to it is that it provides faster frames per second, or FPS. So let's just say you're there and you're taking pictures and you need to get that exact moment of that shot. And your camera has got the ability to take up to 10 frames per second. Well, with the mechanical shutter, it can't take as many frames that fast. So by going into silent mode, you can actually get full 10 frames per second, or whatever your Alpha camera is capable of doing at that point. So definitely a pro, that's a pro benefit for you to get that shot exactly where you want it and when you want it. And now let's go on to the last pro. The last pro for it is the ability to actually take crisp images on a tripod. So let's just say you're taking pictures on a tripod, such as like a landscape or time-elapse. That mechanical shutter can create a vibration in the camera. That vibration is called shutter shock, and that can actually give you a little distortion in your picture. But if you want the ultimate crispness, you can actually eliminate that shutter shock by turning on silent motion. So that is definitely a pro if you are trying to get that crisp, sharp image and you're shooting on a tripod. If you put it in silent mode, you definitely will not get that little, what we would refer to as shutter shock on that image. So those are some pros. I hope that gives you some ideas why you might want to shoot in silent mode on your Sony Alpha camera. So let me check chat, see if anybody has any questions. All right, still looks like we're good there. Remember, put your chat into the question or into the comments there, and we'll answer them as quickly as possible. But not everything's going to be perfect when you're doing this. And so let me give you some ideas of why some cons and what you might expect when you're shooting in silent motion. So the number one is rolling distortion. All right. So we have this rolling distortion capability with your camera. So when you're shooting fast action, you're going to basically see an anomaly. So basically, if you're taking a shot of a fast action, say a golf swing, you may get an anomaly where the golf club looks like a wet noodle. Kind of see that image that you see on screen there, how that golf club in that looks like a bent, like wet noodle. That's because the shutter's not quite fast enough to keep up with that fast action. So by going back to the mechanical shutter, you definitely can eliminate that. But if you do have one of our flagship cameras, say the Alpha 1 or the Alpha 9 Mark III camera, those actual use sensors that are fast enough to actually do silent shooting with high speed stuff, So you can kind of eliminate that with one of our higher end cameras in our top of the line image sensor. So remember, if you have an Alpha 1 or an Alpha 9, that may not be a con for you. And that may be a reason for you to purchase an Alpha 9 or an Alpha 1 if you are wanting to shoot fast action in silent. So that's one of the cons. The other con definitely is going to be shooting in artificial light, okay? What does that mean? Artificial light like LED light bulbs, fluorescent tube lights, or if you're trying to take a picture of your television screen, all of these light sources flash at different intervals. And because of the speed and the way that the image is doing it electronically on the shutter, the camera sensor may not be able to keep up fully with it. So you'll get what we call this banding in there. You'll see these dark lines come through your picture. So what I would recommend, if you are shooting indoors under some artificial lights at that point, take a picture and see if you see the bands in there. If you do, then you may want to switch back over to the mechanical shutter to eliminate that as well. But if you're outside and you're in natural light, definitely the best place to be shooting in silent or be able to not have that banding effect. So let's move into the last con, which is basically the ability to not have flash capabilities. So if you are trying to do flash photography, because we mentioned how that sensor reads the image, the flash flashes quicker than the image can actually write on the sensor. So a lot of our Alpha 7 cameras eliminate the ability to use flash photography while in silent mode. So if you are having that issue, like why is my flash not working, you might be in silent mode. So if you switch back over to the mechanical shutter, then you'll be able to use flash photography. But again, if you do have the Alpha 1 or the Alpha 9 camera, they read fast enough that sometimes you can still use flash photography with those cameras as well, making another reason why you might want to purchase an Alpha 9 or an Alpha 1 if you want to do flash photography and still be silent when you're doing it. So some really cool things. So that was the cons. Let me check the chat down here and see if anybody has questions on any of the pros and cons so far. I don't see any yet in the chat, but yeah, if you got a question, please put it in there. All right, so we went over the pros, the cons of it. But now let's talk about how do I enable it? You own a Sony Alpha camera. How do I turn it from silent shooting to mechanical shot? How do I do this? Well, very simple. You'll pick up your camera. You'll find your menu button on the camera. You'll push this. You'll go to the photo icon on there. And then you'll see down there, number 7 says silent/shutter in there. So you're going to select number 7 on this menu system. And then it'll basically pull you up to shooting mode. Select that shooting mode and you can basically hit enter there. And it's going to give you a basic yes or no. You can turn it on and off, very simple in there. Now, keep in mind, not all of our Alpha cameras have the exact same menu system, but you will find this in pretty much kind of that same camera area into that, look for that silent shooting or that silent/shutter area. Click on that and you'll be able to turn it on and off. So very very easy to turn on and off. But if you're still interested in other things like how to get that to a shortcut in your menu, we've done previous menus with Sony Simplified. So just go back into our catalog there, find how to customize my menu, and it'll show you how to actually link that to certain spots to access it much quicker than that. So please go back and check that out if you're interested in that. So that's how you enable it on a Sony Alpha camera. Pretty simple, you just turn it on and off, right? So we've talked about how to turn it on and how to turn it off. Let me check chat, make sure we got nobody else in here. So it looks like we still are doing good with the chat. All right. All right, so let's go into when and when not to use it, okay? Let's see. We discussed the pros and cons. So when do I want to use it? When silence is necessary. When you don't want to disturb the situation or the environment you're in. Silence is the #1 reason why you'd want to be able to use it. Number 2 is when you're on a tripod and you're trying to do those long exposure photos, the time elapse, and you don't want shutter shock. So definitely then. And number 3, basically when you want the absolutely maximum frames per second from the camera. So when you want the fastest portion of it, that's when you want to turn it on and get those 10 frames per second or faster, depending on your model. When not to use it? Well, we discussed this, fast action, right? Moving things. You don't want to add the anomalies into the photos if it's moving faster than the image can read. So if it's fast action, know that that could happen. On shooting in artificial light, when you have LEDs and so forth like that in the room, you might not want to have it on then. And then you might not want to have it on if you're trying to use a flash, because certain models will not allow you to have that flash capability. So that's when not to use the silent mode shooting there. So let's see, check chat just to make sure I got no other questions in there. Nope, I don't see any questions in chat currently. So I appreciate you guys tuning in and watching. But remember, register your Sony product. If you can register your product, definitely gives you some extra advantages. And currently, if you register now, we're offering up to a $2,000 Visa reward. So remember, when you buy a Sony product, register that on site because you do get extra benefits by doing that. All right. So that was registration. Now, these are some events coming up live because we've actually taken you some of the questions that you got in there and we create a new topic. So if you've actually subscribed to our channel, you'll see these coming up. So, and if you have any ideas or something that you want to know about Sony, put it in the chat. We go back and we read through these chats here, and we'll actually hopefully try to create a video to answer some of your questions in the chat if we aren't able to get to it. So with that, now let's just basically recap what we talked about. What is silent shooting? The pros, the cons, how to turn it on, how to turn it off, when to, when not to use it. And hopefully this gives you more confidence in your Sony Alpha camera, when to and when not to use that silent shutter mode to get the best out of your camera and get that perfect photo that you're looking for. And with that said, only one thing left to do. Remember, like, subscribe, smash that bell so you get notifications when we're going live. That's the only way that we can grow this channel. We appreciate your time. Thanks for watching. I'm Gregory with Sony Simplified, and have a great day.